In recent years, American car companies haven't had much luck getting the general public to notice their new sedans. But periodically, they put one out that everyone notices. With bold, even brash styling, the 2005 Chrysler 300C is one of these cars. And it's this first generation that I'm talking about, produced from 2005 to 2010. The 2011 second generation, redesign, facelift, whatever you want to call it, is more elegant / boring and less gangsta looking, and to be honest, it looks like a completely different car. As such, it was sold as the Lancia Thema in Europe. This first generation car, on the other hand, was very popular in the mid-2000s. It also featured in several music videos and had celebrity owners from Snoop Dogg to, believe it or not, Barack Obama. So here's the car in its box. It's a really ancient Motormax box. I mean, you can see that it is scuffed up in certain areas, but still in a pretty good condition, which means it can protect the car from dust. We have on both sides the Motormax logo, right here and over there. And on the back they have their entire collection listed. Of course, you've got to keep in mind that this is from the mid-2000s, so you can pause the video here and check it out if you want to take a closer look at these different models that they had back then. The first generation Chrysler 300C HEMI is built on the LX platform, which took many design cues from the Mercedes-Benz E-Class chassis. Interestingly, all the European Chrysler 300Cs were built by Magna Steyr in Graz, Austria. Being America's answer to the Mercedes-Benz E-Class, this is a car that we, however, don't see much on European roads. In fact, the first time I saw it was in a vampire movie called Daybreakers, with Ethan Hawke and William Dafoe in it. The movie was made in 2010 and was about most of humanity surviving as vampires by hunting down the few remaining humans and farming them for their blood, which allowed the vampire humanity to continue being human, rather than degenerating into a monstrous feral state. And I think the Chrysler 300 was the perfect car for that movie, because of its massive front grille and headlights giving you the sneer of a bat. You should definitely watch Daybreakers. It's worth your time, believe me. Even if you're not so much into vampire movies, it's got a great story. So after having seen that movie, I wanted to get this car, and it turns out it's actually pretty hard to find one these days. Maisto is the only company that makes it in black, and a few months ago I did find one without a box, but it would have cost me around 50 euros with shipping, so I passed on that one. Later I found out that Motormax also makes this car, and it is even harder to find that one. Then just about a few weeks ago, I searched for the Chrysler 300C on eBay again, and this time, actually found this one by Motormax. What are the chances, right? And the guy was selling it with box for 30 euros plus shipping with a make offer option as well. So I haggled for 26 and I got it for 28, which is a fantastic deal for this rare car. And while it is not black, this is now one of the most unique colors in my Diecast model car collection. I'd call it a metallic dark turquoise, but Chrysler calls this magnesium pearl coat. Other colors Motormax made this car in are white and silver. Now for my 124 scale collectors out there, Motormax also made this in 124 scale, but it is also quite rare to find one these days. So let's take a closer look at this vehicle. So looking at the front of this car, perhaps the only flaw that I can notice, at least in terms of manufacturing defect, is that there is a little bit of an additional gap here between the light and the car body. It's supposed to look like this on both sides, but yeah, what are you gonna do? Apart from that, if you just look at the aesthetics of the car, this is a car that's a little bit of a love it or hate it, I guess. Some people think it's horribly looking, but for me, I think it looks gangsta. It's just got that menacing look that few other cars have. And I think Motormax did a good job in replicating this front grille, this gigantic one. Because in the subsequent generations, Chrysler just got rid of this and replaced it with something far less intimidating looking. Now Motormax has done such a good job that this front grille of theirs has the exact same amount of bars both vertically and horizontally as the real car. Let's take a closer look at these headlights. These are called Smart Beam Halogen Projector headlamps. And you can see that Motormax did put a little bit of extra detail into coloring the indicator embedded inside this light here. It's orange. On the other hand, the downside is that we have two gigantic pegs dead center, pretty much obscuring the projector beam headlights behind it. On the other hand, in real life, especially this light right here, does have the bulb right there dead center in the middle, so it looks just like the headlight on the real Chrysler 300C HEMI. But from the side you can tell that it is a peg, and so it's not that good. Now if you want better looking headlights, you have to buy the Maisto. In my opinion, it has better looking headlights because the pegs aren't exactly dead center here. It also has two pegs per headlight, but the pegs sit over here and over here and are smaller, which means that the headlights are unobstructed. Now moving further down, we also have fog lights on this vehicle, and they're made out of a separate plastic piece, which is great. Next to the fog light we have air intakes. We also have a little bit of a chrome trim here on both sides of the grille. And now if we look here at the center, you can see that the Chrysler logo is there, although the logo in the middle actually looks like a kind of like a wrong symbol, because in reality it's supposed to say Chrysler in the middle, but on the other hand that would be so small that they just didn't bother to put it in there. And you know what? I think it doesn't really matter, because from the distance it does look like the Chrysler logo from the mid-2000s anyway. And this is a grille that's actually perforated. Check it out. I love how the chrome shines. Now let's take a closer look at the engine. It's a little bit hard to open. Goes about this far. And inside you can see this car's impressive 5.7 liter V8 HEMI engine, with the HEMI being a short form for hemispherically shaped combustion chambers. It's got 340 horsepower, goes from 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in 6 seconds, and delivers a top speed of 240 kilometers per hour, and is rear-wheel drive. I think Motormax did a decent job in replicating this engine. You can see the 5.7 liter V8 and the Chrysler badge on the engine itself. You can also see a little valve here that you can open. The HEMI lettering on both sides of the engine is three-dimensional, which is great. And the air intake hose also has some texture on it. There's a few other bits painted here on the engine. However, one advantage that the Maisto engine has over this one on the Motormax is that on the Maisto, this part over here is painted silver, and you have a few warning labels placed here, which are missing on this Motormax. But apart from that, I'd actually say that the main engine itself looks more like the real engine of the car. And I can show you a comparison picture right now so you can see that the engine on this model looks exactly how it does on the real car. So all in all, I think it's a very decent replica on this budget model. Right, let's close the engine. And on the hood itself, you can see these two bumps for the water jets. And we have our windscreen wipers over here. Now moving on to the car's side profile. Here's already where you notice the first big improvement of the Motormax over the Maisto. And that is that the Motormax has window glass not just on the rear passenger doors, but also on the front passenger doors, which is great. You can see the chrome door handles here, including a small hole for the key lock. Now regarding this chrome strip over here, you can see that it does not sit perfectly, but I like how it is a separate piece, while on the Maisto it's just a bump on the car body that's painted silver. And over here you can see the HEMI C badge. This is a three-dimensional badge, and not just a sticker, so that's great. Let's move on to the rims. These are 18-inch 9-spoke chrome-clad aluminum alloy wheels. Behind them you can see the brake disc and the brake caliper. And if we move the wheels, you can see that the brake disc moves, although it's a little hard to see because it doesn't have any texture on it, but you can see like right there, it's moving along with the wheel. So that's a nice additional touch by Motormax, because even on 1/18 scale Maistos, the brake discs do not move and remain stationary along with the brake caliper. Now regarding these mirrors, they're made out of metal, unlike the plastic ones on the Maisto. And while they're the same color as the rest of the car body, on the real car, there's actually an option to have chrome mirror sculpts, which looks pretty cool. And of course the car has suspension, front and back. And to be honest, this is actually a pretty heavy car. I mean, you can definitely feel the weight of it. Moving on to the back of the car, another difference you can see here between the Motormax and the Maisto is that the Motormax has rear parking sensors. And while the Maisto has an Arizona license plate, the Motormax has a Texas license plate. And if we zoom in on this one, you can see that it says, "God bless Texas." And there's even a shape of the state at the top right corner, although it's really hard to focus. Now looking at these taillights, you can see that they have two pegs, and to be honest, they're actually a little worse than the taillights on the Maisto, which look better, because on the Maisto, there's actually a bulb up here, just like on the real car, whereas here we just have a peg. On the other hand, the Maisto also has two pegs on each taillight, and the pegs are however located here and here, which means the second one is right dead center over here and blocking this pattern. So while you do get the main bulb, you have these two pegs located here and here instead. And I think that the center part looks better on the Motormax. So overall, the taillight just looks cleaner here, although it doesn't have as much detail. In the middle, we have the Chrysler logo again. And here's another difference between the Motormax and the Maisto. The Motormax one actually has this in three-dimensional shape, so it's an actual badge. Whereas on the Maisto, it's just a print. And here it says 300C HEMI. And here's a look at the other tail light. I mean, it looks good even though it has those two pegs. And if we look at the exhaust system here, can see that the car has dual exhaust. And while the exhaust tips themselves are not perfectly flat, I mean, you can see that this could be cut better. What I like is that the exhaust has some depth to it. I mean, you can see how it goes all the way inside. It's not just, a pipe that is made out of chrome and doesn't have any holes in it. So, because it has holes, it's realistic looking, and I like that. Now, moving further up, you can see another difference between the Maisto and the Motormax. The Motormax has defroster lines on the rear windshield, while the Maisto does not. And now let's take a look at the trunk. It's a little hard to open. Right, so I managed to get the trunk open. You have to dig your fingernail at the very bottom, but you have to be careful that you do not scratch up this chrome bar here at the bottom. Anyway, let's take a look inside. So this is what the trunk looks like. And I like how they kept it in a beige color so that you can see better than if it were completely black. Of course, there's nothing in there, but still. So overall, I think it's a pretty decent trunk. Let's get this closed. And now if we move further up, you'll see another difference between the Motormax and the Maisto, and that is the sunroof. Check it out. It's always nice when a budget model has a sunroof, isn't it? And right here we have another brake light. So that's also pretty nice. The main reason why I bought the Motormax instead of the Maisto is because not just the front doors open on this one, but the back doors as well, which is amazing. However, on a Motormax, the door hinges aren't built to last, so you gotta be careful when opening them. Don't open them too often. Now, a lot of people criticize Motormax for being the worst of the budget manufacturers, and you can criticize Motormax for quality control issues or flimsy build quality. But if you say that it has less details and features than a Burago or Maisto, you couldn't be further from the truth. We've already established that all 4 doors of the sedan open, and we've also seen how there are window panels on the front passenger doors. But check this out. We even have door locks on all 4 doors. Staying at the doors for a moment, I want you to check out this additional bit of detail Motormax put on the door handles. You can see that it has tortoise shell accenting, just like on the real car. And we also have a chrome strip going on over here, although it's just matte silver. Now let's move on to the interior. So here we are at the front passenger side, and you can see how this two-tone interior actually makes the car look really good. Now, one thing you'll notice is that right here on the center console, there's a little hole right here where there's supposed to be an analog clock. You get the clock on the Maisto while it is missing here on the Motormax, so that kind of sucks. On both sides of the clock, we have air vents, which are detailed pretty well. And underneath we have the stereo, AM/FM stereo, or we actually have a little touchscreen here for the GPS, which is pretty amazing for a mid-2000s car. And further down we have the dual zone climate control buttons right here, and you can see the transmission selector in the middle, which is a 5-speed automatic. Now on the Maisto, there are actually like little numbers right next to this transmission, and they're not here on the Motormax, so that kind of sucks. But still, it looks pretty good, especially because it has the tortoiseshell accenting on the shift knob as well. And up there we have the rear view mirror. You can also see the sunroof from underneath. And next to the rear view mirror we have some overhead reading lights, although they're not particularly detailed on this model. So this actually looks pretty good. I mean, you can see Motormax put some detail on the rear seats, which is very nice. It definitely looks like it's comfortable, doesn't it? You can see the seatbelt latches. They're painted red. And there's pretty decent leg room here as well, although there's of course no carpeting because this is just a budget model. What I am missing here though are vents for the rear passengers, because the real car does have climate control for the rear passengers as well. Here's a look at the driver's side door. You can see that there are some buttons right here which look different on the passenger side door, if you can see that. Anyway, moving into the driver's side, you can see that the tortoise shell accenting continues on the top of the steering wheel. The steering wheel also moves along with the wheels. You can see right there. Not a whole lot though, but just enough. And we even have these buttons here, which are for the music player. The steering wheel does have a Chrysler logo, although on this particular model I think that the print has started to wear off, so you can't really tell what the logo is. However, what's nice is the instrument cluster at the back. It's all just a sticker, but it is bright and pretty easy to read. The floor pedals are not painted. Here's another look at the 5-speed automatic. And over here, we have a fold-down center armrest. Of course, it cannot be lifted, but still. Seats look pretty nice. Now moving on to the rear passenger. This is about as far as the rear passenger doors open, so it's a little hard to see the seats from here. But there's also a fold-down center armrest at the back, at least indicated. Of course, you cannot do anything with it. And you can see the seat belts as well. They aren't painted, but they're there. And here's a look at the car again with everything opened up. So as you can see that even though it is a budget model and just a Motormax, it actually looks pretty good and has a ton of features. Perhaps that's also the reason why this car is so rare. I mean, Motormax stopped making it a while ago, so you just have to keep looking on eBay and maybe you'll get lucky just like I did. I'm actually quite impressed with this American sedan. It's definitely a worthy competitor to the Mercedes-Benz E-Class. So, time to close everything up. You gotta be careful with these doors. And the hood also has a little bit of trouble closing, but I can do it. And here's a look at the bottom of the car, and again you can see that it looks better than the Maisto. I mean, just look at all that extra detail that Motormax put. First of all, we have a heat shield underneath the camshaft. It says Motormax here. Up here it says Scale 118 Chrysler 300C HEMI from the Daimler Chrysler Company 2005. So that's how you know this is a 2005 car. And assuming that it's the same year the model was released, this would be a 13-year-old Motormax model, which is still in very good condition. And the exhaust system continues on over here. Got the two mufflers and the dual exhaust, as well as the indentation for the spare tire. So all in all, it looks pretty good. So all things considered, the Maisto definitely has the better headlights, a clock on the center console, painted floor pedals, and slightly better taillights, but that's about it. The Motormax has window panels on the front passenger doors, 4 opening doors, a 3-dimensional HEMI badging on the sides, 3D Chrysler badging on the trunk, beige seats, parking sensors, defroster lines on the rear windshield, metal mirrors instead of plastic ones, and even has a sunroof. So if you want the Chrysler 300C in black, or if you really place emphasis on the headlights, go with the Maisto. For all other purposes, get the Motormax. And speaking of American sedans, if you're interested in another review of mine, I have reviewed the 1/18 scale Maisto Cadillac DeVille DTS, and I'll put the link in the description, so check that out if you want. And I'll see you in the next video. This is Imperial Diecast, signing out.